By the way, this is David.
Sorry.
Thanks for coming.
It's so
Thanks
good
for
already.
coming on.
That's the problem.
So
Run through real quick.
Okay.
Run through just your quick background.
okay, no,
Just
yeah.
a
yeah.
quick-
So I've spent the last 10 years in the Highline dealer business and turning around underperforming Highline dealers. It is funny. Most dealers can't stand dealing with brokers.
Yeah,
that is a general consensus.
Majority of them. Yeah.
Most brokers hate dealing with dealers. JP, in fairness, is actually one of those rare kind of cases where I actually think that JP could call any general manager of any Highline store in the state of California and say, hey, I need this. And every single one of them will go, if I can get it for you, I'll make it happen. And it is a wild relationship that he has.
Yeah.
But he approaches it as a real entrepreneur and as a business person. He approaches it as, these relationships have to be long-term relationships. It's not, do one deal and move on.
Right.
Which is, in fairness, unfortunately, how most of that business exists.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I see fit, someone that's, have relatively inexperience with like that side of the world, it's the business. And what I've seen, the common trait between everybody that's in it is there gets to a certain point where that the amount of work that's needed to close a deal and stuff like that for people that maybe don't follow through or whatever, it gets to a point where it gets a little too tedious and they fall off. But in all reality, that work is what gets you the deal closed. So the second that effort falls off, you're done.
Yeah.
On top of it, the same thing is the long-term mindset of it. Anybody that goes in any business with a long-term mindset already has an immense amount of chance of succeeding just from that exact moment. Because you treat every encounter from the lowest totem pole to the highest with that mutual respect. And that's all people want.
Correct.
Follow up and respect.
Yep. I mean, it was funny, right? So 2016, we win Dealer of the Year in Greenwich. And it was like, 400% more new car volume, 200% used car volume. And the president of Rolls-Royce at the time is still a personal friend of mine. It's a gentleman named Pedro Moda, now running Aston Martin North America. And it was
Which are killing it.
Sorry?
Which are killing it.
They're doing great.
Yeah. No, I mean, I happen to think right now that the most objectively beautiful new supercar on the road in that GT category is the DB12. That DB12 Volante in the right colors. There's, some of these marketing guys get a little avant-garde with the color selections. And, obviously some focus group was like, yeah, pink and purple go together. And, but anyways, a beautiful car. But he had said to me once, what do you think makes the difference in the business? And I said to him, the exact analogy I said was, I look at it like a bodega in New York City, right? And so it's one of the most bizarre businesses because any other food service business, if we're talking, is brutal. And if in most cases they survive, if they're really good, for between 5 and 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when the lease is up, the restaurant closes. Some of these bodegas exist for 40 years. I mean, they're family businesses, and you walk into them, the floor's all fucked up. The food is this, chips and chewing gum and, nicotine packets and stuff. But that's the secret sauce. Is for those people that live in that neighborhood, when they open the door, it's not hello. And then these people start to learn their names. They pick up the phone when somebody calls. They call back when they say, so what is ridiculous in the high-end car business, it was novel to just call somebody back.
Mm-hmm.
And
What a fucking concept.
It was mind blowing.
Wild.
It was mind blowing. I mean, I still remember it's one of the first deals I ever did. It was a black Ghost with moccasin interior, those heinous painted wheels, and the guy lived in South Jersey, and he had sent in a lead. And I mean, I still am like, my personal rule is within 10 minutes, right? Within 10 minutes, you got to, done something. And I called this guy, hey, got your thing. Thanks for taking the time. And he was like, you're the first store out of 6 that has called me back.
And you called within 10 minutes.
And I called within 10 minutes. You know, he goes, I don't even want that color. I really don't want that color. But I've been shopping for this car now for 4 months, and I like. So again, I do think like right place at right time. Everybody else, I guess, sucked, you know, a little bit more than we sucked at the time.
A lot of them do.
Right.
Still.
And I mean that is one of the craziest things where a lot of it goes into culture, right? And one of the craziest things I ever heard, and I wish I remembered the dude's name, but I don't. I remember what he looks like. I was at an NADA conference, so North American Dealer Association conference, which are like watching paint dry usually for the most part, right? And this guy came in, and you know, this thing goes up in the slide, and he's talking about behavioral psychology. And he said one of the most, for me, fundamental things that I take into, you know, leading teams or running teams, and I'm, you know, where I've been lucky enough to do that, is this idea of exceed the customer's expectations. And so if I'm running a Honda store, sure, let's exceed the customer expectations.
Yeah, a little easier there.
Right. Okay. If you're running Rolls-Royce and you're expecting somebody who's a salesperson to exceed the fucking customer's expectations, what are you talking about?
Right.
These, I mean, you know, these folks live an entirely different echelon day to day. Not all of them.
Is that what a Highline sales guy makes about?
I would argue there are some that make 10 times that.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
People that are connected,
your
have
one-offs,
relationships.
Right.
Let's talk about your normal, your average.
I would say that
You're no follow-up, no checkup, kind of just.
no, I mean, so in some stores it's 100% commission.
Got it.
And you make nothing. And I mean, in fairness, that's how I learned. I mean, it was very much eat what you kill and sink or swim. I mean, feast or famine. There were months where you sold 2 cars and you'd make $1,500, and then there was months where you sold 15 and you'd make 40 grand. And so in fairness, you have to be pretty crazy to begin with to want to make that your livelihood. I think you have to be a little more crazy to keep at it. But there are those ebbs and flows. There are those ebbs and flows. I mean, obviously through the pandemic and everything that happened there, some people were just making unbelievable money selling supercars, both the sales folks and the dealers. But I don't know if have you either of you had a chance to, have you ever been to London?
I've been to London.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the one hotel in London that is like, if you, and it's, you know, whether you're old money or new money, like the hotel in London, okay, maybe it's Dorchester too, but it's the Rosewood. And if you book a room at the Rosewood, there's a king room or above, they dispatch a Rolls-Royce Phantom with a driver to come and collect you from the train station or the airport. The dude is in full coattails, hat, white gloves, and there's, you know, it's like something out of like the 70s.
Yeah. Exceed expectations.
Right. And so when we're sitting here having these conversations about like, oh, here's the customer profile, here's how you're supposed to sell them a car, here's what they expect when walking around, I'm sitting here going, there isn't a single person in this fucking room that's even set foot in a Rosewood hotel. And I'm supposed to be learning here how to exceed a person's expectations. That's where they go for their like weekly staycation. You hear these stories, right? Of like the you know, some part of the royal family from UAE shows up in London, and every year they rent 2 weeks at the Dorchester in London, the top 2 floors. They paint the rooms. They change the door handles. They change the carpets, and the hotel stocks all this shit, including the curtains. And they come in and turn the entire top 2 floors into their room. I don't give a fuck who you think you are in that training session. There's no way whatever you're going to tell me is going to help me exceed that person's expectations. So going back to calling somebody back, why don't we just meet their expectations? And some of them are basic. Call me back when I call you. If you tell me you're going to do something, fucking do it.
What the fuck are we talking about?
And the most novel one, if you fuck it up, just tell me.
That's it.
What do you think it is for some of these people that just so desperately, you can also like pop that over the other side if you want, so desperately fail to meet the expectations? Do they just think, hey, I've got it, and if they want it, they're gonna buy it, no matter how
I think
bad
there's
I am?
absolutely some of that. I think there's absolutely some of that.
Just
I mean,
laziness.
yeah. I mean, so
It feels so obvious.
right.
It feels so obvious. If you're selling expensive cars to rich people, they want at least a basic decency. Because those people generally, from what I've seen, care a lot on how they're treated.
100%.
And they don't need anything necessarily. They don't need your car. There may be some people that go, I don't care, I'll deal with all of it because this is the one and I need this one. But in general, I've seen plenty of people that are willing to just, I really wanted this, but I don't like you and how you've treated me, and I'm willing to just nuke the whole thing as a result.
Right.
So,
I mean,
where do people miss that?
So, if you look at,
By the way, this is David.
Sorry.
Thanks for coming.
It's so
Thanks
good
for
already.
coming on.
That's the problem.
So
Run through real quick.
Okay.
Run through just, you told us before we technically started. I don't even know when we started, but what, just your quick background.
okay.
Why you're qualified to be on Supercar Connection.
Okay.
As goofy as that sounds.
So
You don't have to go like into the details.
no,
Just
yeah.
the
So
quick,
I've spent the last 10 years in the Highline dealer business and turning around underperforming Highline dealers,
you're a big Ed Bolian fan.
something like that.
We'll get to
like
all that
that.
shit
Yeah.
later. I want to recircle to all
Yeah,
that
yeah,
later.
sorry.
All good.
So
That's
yeah,
fine.
back
But, yeah,
where
so
we
going,
were.
So going back to that point, right? So how you treat a customer. This might be an unpopular statement. I'm not sure that look at the current model range of Ferraris. Look at the current model range of Lamborghinis, G-Wagons. I'm not sure that those things are objectively beautiful. Some of them are. I can't generalize all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people want them? The core of why people want them is the perception that you can't get one.
Yeah. As soon as you
The
can.
Birkin bag, right? The Birkin
cost
bag.
it.
I mean, goddamn, we used to. Everyone talks about this stupid fucking handbag. Now, Hermes has a different methodology, I'm told. The rumor is at the end of the year, all the Birkin bags they don't sell, they used to destroy. And I don't think that's accurate, but it did happen way back when. And of course, the news picked it up. But it was this idea that you can't have this. You
Scarcity.
cannot get one. Right. Scarcity, perception of scarcity. And so that when we talk about these things like the Birkin bag, that Ferrari model of
Rolex wait
you have to
list.
earn bingo, right? You have to earn your way
Mm-hmm.
to that. I do think that the future of the Highline car business, and I mean especially whether it's collector car, exotic new car, or that vintage collector car crowd, the next generation, okay, folks like us, right, our age group, we're not interested in playing that game. I don't want to hear about it. Okay, I'm not only am I not patient enough to listen to that whole drivel, but I'm not going to sit here and set $1 million on fire to go hopefully earn an allocation for a car that's not even out yet 5 years from now. We're just not that. We're not those folks.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There is an echelon of car person that still exists up there that plays that game, and it's really the folks that are like, money is completely no object, and it's like, sure, I'll give a dealer $1.5 million of my dollars, and hopefully one day I'll end up with the equivalent like an SP3 or the next McLaren that's coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that mentality percolates down. It's a trickle down effect. So when it comes to the treatment of the customer, you get this kind of
Entitlement.
yeah. And so in fairness, again, like one of those things that's just unbelievably novel, in addition to just calling people back, is making it more approachable. making it more approachable. So one of the things I thought was really interesting in Greenwich, right? And I remember we were sitting in a dealer meeting and I suggested this, and one of the things that is pretty wild, if you ever get a chance to go to London, is the volume of supercars that drive around in central London. It
Really?
makes no sense.
Lots of Kuwait plates too.
Correct. Right. So that you've got, what is also wild is it's a lot of chauffeur driven Mulsans, Phantoms, Ghosts, stuff you don't even see in Beverly Hills.
Right.
You definitely don't see in New York. I mean, again, the joke used to be, right, if your wealth manager at, B of A shows up to the building on Lex getting out the back of a Ghost, that guy's going to get launched, right? You can't, your clients cannot see you drive around. In London, it's like this total inverse where like there's almost this expectation you have an S-Class or a 7 Series with a driver or a chauffeur. And the problem is, so in fairness, right? So it also in some parts of Texas, right, is you've got these more conservative neighborhoods, and especially for folks in the financial services industry, while the markets do this, I can't pull a Phantom or a Dawn or a new Flying Spur out of my garage or a Huracan or whatever. The market's shitting itself. Or if I have one and the market's shitting itself, I got to get rid of it. The only way you start to change that perception is if people start driving around and they see more of them all over the place. And they think, okay, I'm less of an outlier here. I'm kind of swimming in the same stream. So the dealership would have demos and stuff. And I used to take on Sundays. It didn't matter what the weather was. I actually preferred it if the car was dirty. And I would go to Starbucks and I'd park a Ghost right in front of Starbucks. Filthy, unwashed. And it was, it'd be in Greenwich or, Rye, New York, some of these wealthier neighborhoods. And the idea was somebody might walk past that thing and think, shit, this dude drives this car every day. I'm paying attention to the dealer plate or whatever. And I remember, so I'd go to the gym in the morning and go pick up my sweet green smoothie, and I'd go down Greenwich Ave. And there was this guy in a black zip up. It was this tiny little dog, Yorkie, that would walk down the sidewalk, and I drive past him every morning. And this dude would stop as I drove past and just watch the car go past. That guy bought a car a year later.
From you?
Yeah.
Hey.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Nick, I don't remember his last name.
He just said,
but-
I gotta have that car.
So, and was this idea of I'm not going to be, frankly, the only asshole driving around this town in a enter brand of car here. Right. So in fairness, right, so you look around the country, South Florida, Southern California, now parts of Texas are these epicenters of car culture. They become epicenters of car culture. It's never happened in New England. It has never happened in New England. It's never happened in Chicago because these are more conservative markets, shockingly financial centers of the United States. But that culture of really genuinely like, fuck you, I have it, and if you want it, this is how we're going to play the game. Yeah, I think that's, in fairness, that's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
For a long time. And I do think that dealers are evolving. I think they're learning. I think the flip side is us as consumers, I'm actually happy doing less negotiating if you make the process for me to buy easier.
100%.
So if you give me a way to negotiate, right, or complete a deal for my iPad, I'll do that in 2.5 seconds as opposed to sitting and going back and forth and back and forth. And hey, bro, I don't know where you're getting that fucking number from, but here's what like Auto Trader says, and you're like 10 grand higher than Auto Trader, so that's my offer. That all you have to do is look at Tesla to understand that the market has spoken.
Right, 100%. When Tesla came in and started revolutionizing the car buying process, that's when the beginning of I was like, all right, this is going to start turning. And I was always wondering what point that the bigger franchise dealers are going to start taking note of that and to start at least adapting some type of buying. And shockingly, a lot of dealers haven't done a single thing. If not, they've gotten worse.
Yeah, because they're in control. They don't
actually
want it that
ridiculous.
way because they want to be able to set how much money they can make. And the manufacturers bend to the will of the dealers.
So, perfectly said.
Okay, I was about to say, am I wrong?
No. Perfectly said. So, fun fact.
I love those.
The United States is the only market in the entire world where a manufacturer cannot cancel a franchise dealer.
Wow.
It's the only place in the world. Every other market
They
around
can
the world,
force someone to sell?
they
Or
don't
no?
even have to force you to sell. If I am hypothetically BMW of Manchester, England, and you are the regional manager for BMW for the United Kingdom, and I do something that you think is a disservice to the brand, I'll get 3 or 4 violations and you just stop sending me cars. Now I've got a $30 million building I've got to pay rent on. How the fuck am I paying my bills? Because that is, if in effect, maybe it's a little dramatic, but that's what happens.
Right.
So in other markets, when the OEM says jump,
You move.
you go how high?
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's this fuck you guys and fuck you back, right? Now, what is interesting, and I do, so as somebody who's got terrible ADHD, I don't read a lot, but the one book and one managerial philosophy I think is fascinating is the Toyota kata style of management. And a lot of people may not know that if Toyota didn't exist, Porsche would not exist. There's a crazy story of how old man Toyota went to see Porsche when Porsche was basically broke and went through this like right there kind of in the factory coaching exercises is how I recall the story going. And like most specialty car companies really didn't have a scalable production approach. And so Toyota does 2 things that are very interesting. Number one, it's just-in-time manufacturing. So if you want to be a supplier to Toyota, you need to build your distribution center 100 yards from my factory. So that when my computer system tells your computer system, I'm ready for that air conditioning unit, it shows up, it goes in a car, and the car goes out the back end and gets on a truck and goes off to dealer in like 24 hours. Part 2. If you want to be a supplier for Toyota, you have to share in the warranty expense that goes into your shit breaking. So, Toyota's shit doesn't break. And this is another thing about the car business, which is fascinating because it's not just in the car business, it applies to everything in life. Pay plan drives behavior. So I've now made it a financial. So I mean, look at what happened, right, with the whole Kata airbag thing, that whole shit show. The reason that they went bankrupt was because Toyota's, in fairness, not the only one of them now that does that, warranty risk sharing. But Toyota and Lexus have a very unique approach to the dealer business, and it is unique. And their approach is pretty violently, we're going to build great products, we're going to build reliable products, maybe not the most exciting products, but we're going to make sure our dealers are really profitable. And why are we going to make sure the dealers are really profitable? Because it means they're going to take care of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're a Lexus dealer or a Toyota dealer and you're making $5 million a year selling Toyotas net at EBITDA, and Toyota North America or whatever gets a email from a customer who's bought their 6th Toyota and they were out of warranty by 3 days, and you denied a brake caliper claim, and so did we, and the part's $480 and it needs an hour of labor to put it on. The phone call isn't, hey, what can we do together to help this customer? The phone call is, fuck you. You made $5 million last year. Fucking buy that guy a brake caliper.
Right.
And 99% of the time, the dealer goes, you're absolutely right. I don't know who downstairs was running around with their pants on their head that day, but I'm going to go down. We're going to go buy that guy a brake caliper.
Mm-hmm.
That's why everyone that works at Toyota and Lexus can go to sleep at night knowing my customer is taken care of. And it's like all this crap you hear about, right? Richard Branson, if I take care of my people, the customer takes care of themselves. The same philosophy applies here. If the dealer network is profitable, I don't have to worry about them nickeling and diming the customer.
They're corporate people too.
Yep.
So, Toyota has like the lowest turnover in OEM corporate.
Correct.
Those people are there for fucking their
They
whole
treat their
careers.
employees,
100%.
give them great benefits, treat them well. The whole nine.
It is one of those funny things where I think like if you go online and you look up pictures of the parking lot, the employee parking lots at some of these factories, and you can tell a lot by are the staff driving the product, because there's all those employee purchase programs. And especially if you're involved in building it, your colleagues are going to be the ones telling you whether or not you should be spending your own money on it. Right. But that Toyota Lexus approach, I mean, I've got a friend of mine who runs marketing for Longo in El Monte, and that is one of the most outstanding retail operations, I would go as far to say, in the world. I mean, it just operates at a totally different standard. Their approach is the total inverse of what we've been talking about, which is it is customer centric. It is make the process as easy as possible. And in fairness, Greg Penske, who owns the organization during the pandemic, the pandemic and COVID-19, was one of the first dealers to come out and say everything's at MSRP. No gimmicks, no games, no show up here and bless you. And in fairness, that's actually how I met JP, because I happen to have the same philosophy, which is that as a dealer, a reseller, how can it possibly be up to me to charge a customer over MSRP for something we don't build? And it goes back to the beginning of this, which is the long-term approach to the customer. And I remember, because listen, at an organization like a Bentley and Rolls-Royce and Lamborghini dealer, especially during the pandemic, you had people that were paying 75, 80 grand, 100 grand over sticker, right, for cars. That's, sales guys looking at these commission opportunities and like, holy shit. When the market out here found out that we were willing, so the rule was, we'll take an order at MSRP and I'll guarantee it, put it in writing. No games, no gimmicks, no, after that, oh, well, it showed up now and my manager has said I can't really sell it to you. None of that. Now, if we had somebody who walked away from an order, sure, we would ask for market value at that time, right? But that's how I met JP. And it was wild at that time because JP was the one who came to us and said, you're the only one that's willing to commit to that. And so shockingly, 2021, fastest growing Lamborghini dealer in the world. But we didn't do anything novel.
Yeah.
We didn't do anything novel. We were fair. I think we were fair. I'm sure had some folks that got, annoyed with us, but, it was not rocket science. Certainly not rocket science.
Because really think about what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the fact that to be the best and win at the game, do the things you're supposed to do,
right,
and take care of the people that take care of you.
Right.
How ridiculous is a conversation really at the basis of it?
Yeah.
I can't even believe it. But it's such a prominent problem nowadays. And I think it's been like that for so long that a majority of car buyers are just so used to it that they're just where it's at right now. But they don't realize that there's other places and or better processes around. They just have to find it. And it's sad that they have to go to that extent to even find that type of service.
The notion of having the confidence to admit when something's gone wrong, that if I was going to say like one thing that worries me about what the future of, I don't care what business it is this next generation of employee that's coming up. We see it in TikTok and social media videos. People walking into a Starbucks or, somebody in a restaurant gets an order wrong. And the sensation is fuck you, Mr. Customer. Like, I don't know what you want me to do about it. And you're like, hold on a second. Like, calm down. Okay. I don't think you made that, but whoever didn't do it right. And it is, again, novel that like, hey, and it happens in car dealerships all the time. And in fairness, most reasonable people understand that shit happens to their car at a car dealership on occasion. Okay. I mean, how many times have you picked up a car from a car dealership and like 3 days later looked down and been like, I definitely did not curb that fucking wheel.
Yep.
Definitely did not fucking do that.
I own a body shop. I own a collision center. It's my livelihood.
Right.
Is I look at something and I'm like, it came in perfect, about to leave. And I'm like, wait a second, but that might not have been there like that. What happened here? And it's just QC. And that's at a microscopic level compared to you guys. Trust me, I understand.
But so that, like the notion of, hey, because everybody comes ripping into your office and like, hey man, hey, chill. It's all good. I'm gonna call the guy, tell him this is what happened, or whoever it is, and we're gonna fix it.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna apologize. We're gonna say this is what's happened. And in fairness, again, assuming that this is a relatively, it doesn't even have to be a reasonable, relatively, we've earned that customer's trust for life.
100%.
They didn't find it. We found it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to own it. That's it. And if they get upset about it, that's, half the reason those people with manager titles get paid. That's their job.
Yep.
Figure it out. Figure out what needs to happen to take care of the customer.
Right.
Solve the fucking problem.
Yeah.
But you got a better shot than giving it back to them and them going, what's this big scratch on my door? Right. And then they're on the forums and they're telling everyone,
Yep.
This is the worst dealer ever. Got my car back after an oil change. This was wrong. They acted like they did nothing wrong and are trying not to fix it. And blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. Everyone's like, all right, screw them. We're not going.
I mean, what's the, that it's a behavioral psychology statistic. It is 4 times harder to get somebody to advocate for you positively than it is for somebody to advocate negatively.
Yeah. You have to exceed expectations so far.
Right.
But you don't have to fall short very far.
Right. And it takes 2 seconds for trust to evaporate, and it takes obviously exponentially longer than that to earn it,
Mm-hmm.
And that's in fairness, and that's another one of the unique things about the Highline business is how much it relies on. I mean, like tonight, where we're sitting here right now, it relies on that person to person.
That's
Hey,
it.
this one verified by someone I trust. You get an initial handicap of trust
100%.
before you fuck it up. Right.
Then it's on you at that point.
Yeah. Then it's on you at that point. Right.
Which is a dangerous world because you get to a point where like, if you become a source of trusted network like that, it's not a sense where you're accessible like that, but at the same time, you got to be very wise of who you're connecting and how you're connecting certain things.
100%.
Because one wrong little connection like that can go south, it could end everything like that in that direction. That's the last thing you want to happen.
Yeah.
So there's a duality to it.
It's especially for this level of the car business or cars in general. So you said one of the things that I think I've probably said almost exactly maybe 1,000 times. No one needs anything at this level of the car business. If you need transportation, Hyundai, Kia, Toyota, Subaru, they'll take care of you. They will find something for you. So it's all purely desire-based. It's emotional. It is 100% emotion. And with that has to come a different level of care, attention, and most importantly, detail. If you're buying need of transportation, your family's looking for that new Toyota Sienna minivan or, and you've gone online and watched, Doug DeMuro talking about how many fucking cup holders something has or whatever.
How many white monsters go in this
right.
car?
And I love it is 99% of the time that customer is more educated than anyone inside that dealership on the product, especially today. Didn't used to be like that, but especially today.
And you let the sales guy know that, and he's
right.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he's loving it.
This
He's
is who I'm
loving it.
dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being like 8 or 9 years old and my family was going to look at a Honda Pilot. I could, if I could draw, I remember the exact scene and where I was standing. We were looking at a Honda Pilot, and the sales guy comes up, and my mom and dad are standing there and say to this guy, yeah, how many seats does it have? Now, I know in the back of my head, I know for a fact that it's an 8-passenger car. And the guy goes, it seats 7. And I'm 8 years old or whatever. And I said, no, it does not. And the guy's like, no, it seats 7. I said, I don't want to be rude, but the one over there that's in the showroom doesn't seat 7, it seats 8. Just like all the other ones that are parked outside. Car definitely seats 8. That started happening decades ago, right? Where you used to. I mean, I know people who were selling BMWs in the 80s and 90s that were making over $200,000 a year.
Back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Cars didn't have window stickers. There were phone systems where you used to be able to listen in to the desk. So people would be sitting, when that whole thing was like, oh, I'll go get you guys a bottle of water. Or I'll go, make a photocopy of your driver's license. And, husband and wife sitting there talking about, I don't like the color. I don't like the interior. I think this payment's too high. And they'd all be on the other side of the wall listening to the phone. Obviously, there were people that went to jail, and that's highly illegal and unethical. But that is the stuff that used to happen. It only became a rule because somebody got caught doing it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously has evolved a lot than that. But those folks that used to be making that kind of money, you could make car sales a career.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was relationship based. I mean, you really could have these folks that sold a car to a grandfather, a dad, and a grandson. It's not going to be a thing. But in fairness, within the next 10 years, right? I would imagine that
there's too much access to information now.
Right.
You're not just going down to the dealer. You're not shaking a guy's hand and going, you're my guy, David.
Right.
It's like, I can go on the internet and go, well, they have a cheaper one.
Right.
And their price is better. And then it's like, it doesn't matter who I'm
100%.
dealing with. I just want the cheapest one.
Right.
That's reasonably close to me.
Right. And those relationships, I think, again, if we separate the commodity car business from the highline car business, they still exist up here in the highline car business. More
to an extent.
More so.
I have a question about that, actually, kind of. So like most of those people in the highline world, how dependent are people on the spec of the car?
How important is the spec?
Well, even just like when you said earlier, like the guy called and he was like, this isn't really the color I want.
I don't want the color. Yep.
But you're the only one that answered.
Yep.
Like how much of these cars are people just like, they're looking around and it's like, no, I want an F8 that's yellow with black interior and yellow stitching, and that's all I want. And you have one and they have one and I want the best price. Or how much is it just like, I want maybe a Ferrari, I like the 720, maybe this. I don't really care about the color. Just
so I think
jeez, forgive me, everyone.
It is a listen, totally reasonable question because again, that kind of consumer behavior transcends just the highline car business. There are days where you go into your favorite restaurant and you know exactly what you want to order the second you walk in there. And then there are days you walk into your favorite restaurant and you go, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to decide kind of what I want.
Let's get a little crazy today.
Yeah, exactly.
Scan the menu.
So there are people that kind of sit across that spectrum. There are people that'll come in and, in fairness, those are the ones where that stuff we were talking about earlier, where like the attention to detail for the experience are so critical. You said time kills deals, right? Guy walks into the showroom and shakes your hand and goes, I do. I want that. I want an onyx metallic Bentayga with a beluga interior and a red pipe. Do you have one? And the answer is no, but I can get one for you. Well, I don't really want it. Listen, I'm going to make some phone calls. I'm going to try to go get one for you. You will hear from me in the next hour. If you don't call that guy back, you can be 90% sure he's going to go find his car.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's going to go buy it from wherever he has it. Those folks are buying, their style of buying is more commodity-like. If you have it, I'll buy it from you. If you don't have it, I'll buy it for you. Then there's the folks who maybe have bought 5 or 6 cars. You're like, the folks that have relationships with places like O'Gara and Miller Motor Cars and Brayman. Some of these folks, they've been buying there for a very, very long time. And that relationship will sometimes result in a customer being willing to compromise on some things if they want it now. One of the things that fascinates all of these OEMs about the US car market is we are the least patient consumer pool. So everywhere else in the world, people have no problem waiting 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months for the car. You know, going to pick your car. That's in fairness, right? So we obviously as US, you know, car guys, we look at Dubai, we look at some of these other markets, we look at some of these cars, we're like, holy moly, you know, like what is that? And in fairness, for most Americans, we're also sitting there going, Jesus, that thing's gonna be worth, it's like an anvil from a depreciation standpoint, right? That thing's gonna be worth fuck all. You know? And you would never order it here as a dealer because you'd be like, it's going to be a paperweight for the next 2 years out front, you know?
Yeah. The interior is yellow and green.
So
together.
Because of the lack of patience of U.S. car buyers is the reason black, white, and gray exist. And black, white, and gray shockingly become the most popular cars because they become the most, they're the most saturated in the marketplace. They also carry the higher residual values so that people buy them. So lease price lower, blah, 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 right? So, that question is also fascinating because it changes based on the generation of the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
So perfect example. Bentley Continental, which is a fascinating car in and of itself. Car makes no sense. It should never have come out. It was a bizarre business case, but it worked. The car launches in this alpine green tan interior, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the chrome bits. That car launches today in that color combination, and anyone that is in a similar age range to anyone in this room is like, grandpa car.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Although it's actually quite tasteful.
Now, especially, I think stunning.
Right.
Really
It's
genuinely
grown on me.
beautiful.
It's grown on me.
Genuinely
It's
beautiful,
grown on me.
right?
I'd happily take a saddle interior.
I happen to think that a
What happened?
dark sapphire saddle interior with a blue pipe is one of the most elegant color. I don't care what car it is. Range Rover, Bentley, fully agreed.
Well, it's not saying I would choose saddle over anything else, but I do like saddle. It's got to be all saddle. I want saddle dash. I want saddle steering wheel.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I want saddle headliner.
Yep.
Yes.
So one of my, this is recent. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. A customer comes in and they're looking at a Bentayga. I think it was a Bentayga. It may have been a Cullinan, but I think it was a Bentayga.
Money to burn.
And and replacing a Range Rover, shockingly.
Money to burn.
And the initial question was a dark sapphire, a blue, with some type of a beige, right? Whether it was seashell or linen or getting to those darker tan, saddle, camel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, linen doesn't have me.
Linen is a beautiful color in pictures. I've always said this to folks. If you don't wear the highest quality jeans in the world and wash them 1,000 times before you get in the car, you will annoy yourself if you're a car person.
Mm-hmm.
But so it was for a wife, and so put the spec together, and while we were waiting for them to firm up the order and leave a deposit, this car comes into the showroom, and it's it was one of the first Bentayga S, the darkened kit and the 5-spoke wheel and the wing and the whole thing, and went from chrome, blue, linen to black wheels, linen interior, black piping or red pipe, this very aggressive dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember kind of sitting with the team and kind of like, how can you go? And that's one of the things that's become fascinating is even to somebody that's in their 60s, the chrome and the blues and the greens is an old people car. That's what my dad drove. And they don't want to feel like they're driving an old people car. And so it was because I remember when they first, it's got all these sport variants, and obviously Mercedes has done, I happen to believe totally bastardized AMG and BMW and what they've done. They put M on everything.
Yeah.
It's a margin exercise, right?
Got the AMG line interior.
I mean, I remember looking at like when they did like, which I think was one of the most beautiful cars when it came out in 2014, was the new S-Class. And it was like that AMG stamp on the outside of the 21-inch wheel. And I was like, there's nothing about this car that's AMG. There is zero on this car.
AMG wheels.
Right. And like a different splitter and this other thing. And like,
Does
some of them
AMG
had like
even
a
make
painted,
wheels is the question. They make engines.
Probably not.
Yeah.
It's a good question, but I can tell you that
Marketing.
it was, you know, an accountant somewhere was like, we can charge $500, you know, and that's how it happened, right?
That's a pretty good impression.
You know, probably the guy probably sounded just like that. So, but again, going back to it was like, here is this product that initially you're kind of like, okay, so I mean, this obviously for the younger Bentley buyer, but then you watched in real time that more traditional Bentley buyer was like, I don't want to drive an old people car.
Right.
We saw that black on black roll and he goes verbatim, ooh, that thing is sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fairness, it's like, you know, you look around like those, the same folks in that sort of like age range, right? They're like 60 plus that walk around in joggers with like neon Nikes on.
Yeah.
It's the same person, right? That, you know, they're not, you know, back east or even in parts of Texas, right? Those more traditional areas is they're not in Sperry's with boat shorts and, you know, a fucking Vineyard Vines polo anymore. You know, that you look, I don't want to go to dinner with anybody that's dressed like that.
I think it's more than that though. So the guy had specced out an old person spec, if you will, right?
More traditional spec.
So he was ready. He was ready for that.
Yep.
And then saw the car roll in. I think some of these people, because I've seen this with like my dad, for example. You have an idea of what you want from a more traditional background. This is what I want. I know it's what I want. This is what I'm going to get. And then you see something in person and you go, wow, I never would have done that in my imagination. But now that I'm seeing
100%.
it here, that's the one I want.
100%.
So,
I mean, if you had said to me when I started with the Rolls-Royce brand in 2015 that people would have an interest in a white EWB Phantom with a full blue interior, I would have been like, not in this lifetime.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist.
Orange would be the most popular color.
And in fairness, even the the Mandarin stuff had only just started, but it is one of the most fascinating, I happen to think, design case studies. The first car company to bring an orange seat to the car market as a launch spec.
As a launch spec.
As a launch spec was the Rolls-Royce Dawn.
Mm. You know what's crazy?
What year was this? Sorry.
2016.
Hermes interior.
Yeah. That's exactly what it was. That is what the world called it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a
they don't call it Mandarin.
Midnight Sapphire.
It's the Hermes interior.
Yeah. And the number, in fairness, I remember sitting there taking the phone calls when the YouTube video went live. And Michael was the guy's name. He was English. That is how he described it. He said, my wife sent me this YouTube video. This is the car. It's blue with like this Hermes interior.
Mm-hmm.
And okay. And I want the car exactly like it is in the video. The exact same thing. Right. Launch spec, right? But
looks like the bag.
How, and I do have to give them credit, right? Is the level of confidence that you have to have bringing a car to market like a Rolls-Royce with an orange interior and kind of sitting there and being like, all right, let's see if we got this right or not. And we know as supercar enthusiasts, that color interior transcended every other brand. I mean, it's one of the few where like even people have done exclusive manufacturer 911s with bright blues, bright oranges, purples.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That
MSO.
It started in 2016. Now, in fairness, Lamborghini really obviously is the OG for like just the craziest interiors. Right. But the first car company that came out and said it is acceptable, regardless of your age, to drive around in a car with the top fucking down with an orange interior was Rolls-Royce.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about what was going on during that time. The internet growing popularity was skyrocketing. Social media was just beginning the dawn of its age. COVID is what pushed us past that level. New money's here. I want to be seen. This is where everything's going. What way better to do that than what I fucking drive every day?
Yeah,
100%.
Give me the bright color.
100%.
Where people see it on the picture and go, "Wow,
Yeah,
that's insane."
And it,
That dude's got an orange interior in his Rolls-Royce.
Marketing became a whole different echelon when that happened.
look at the Starlight headliner.
Yeah.
I mean, when first of all, there is zero functionality, right? Okay. Functionality, right? If you like, oh, I'm going to read something and then turn on.
Well, I mean, how much functionality is in a Rolls-Royce in general?
Aside from going to point A to point B?
Exactly.
None.
Right. But that Starlight headliner doesn't even function as a light,
functions as a vibe.
Right.
David.
It functions as I just picked up my Rolls-Royce, my first Rolls-Royce. You need to come fucking look at the ceiling.
Yes.
That's what happens.
Sit in the back seat.
That's what happens.
At night.
And then, I think it was like 2019.
Do you hate it, David? Do you hate the Starlight headline?
So
I feel like you don't like
it. There's a dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
If you drive a Rolls-Royce frequently, I guarantee you'll turn it off.
Okay.
How frequently?
More than twice a week.
Okay.
And in fairness, at nighttime, right? Because daytime, it doesn't matter.
Why do you turn it off?
Because it reflects on everything.
But
Like it
cool, no?
Well, again, it's cool if it's still a novelty.
Mm-hmm.
And so folks who drive them every day,
yeah,
you keep it. Now, in fairness, it stays. You turn it off, it stays off, right? So it's not,
Sure.
if it has starlights, and there are. I mean, one of the things that is a fascinating thing is, and I don't actually know why more people don't do it. The previous generation Ghost, now in today's market, is one of the most ridiculous values in the car market, bar none. You can, which is obviously that little bit of the business that I've been in, you can lease those cars as used cars.
Yeah.
But the certified pre-owned warranty that comes on a Rolls-Royce is one of the most outrageous vehicle warranties that exists, period, end of story. Okay?
Really?
It's like the old BMW warranties where it covers everything. Brakes, rotors, windshield wipers, light bulbs, rattles. Now, it might take 2.5 months to get a part,
Right.
but
Sure.
it covers everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, a 2012 or 2013 Ghost for 140 grand with 30,000 miles, that's a certified pre-owned car, is you drive the wheels off of it.
Yeah.
And it is maybe depreciate another 20 grand. 25 grand.
What is the
right?
duration of that? It's a factory warranty.
So I think they do it in like 2-year increments.
Got it.
So it'll depreciate a third of the amount as a 7 Series.
Correct.
Not bad.
And it is a twin scroll, twin turbo, 12-cylinder, 525 horsepower car. And I will tell you,
And you're in a Rolls Royce.
and it's
Yeah.
right. And even the older generation car is such a good car. It is such a good car, and I credit where it's due. They are reliable. They are actually reliable. It's little things, electrical stuff like an oxygen sensor or something,
That'll get taken care of in their
yeah.
super warranty that
Oh,
they
yeah.
have.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is a no nonsense warranty. I mean, I remember reading the first generation of that warranty and you're one of that group that rents the whole top floor at the Dorchester and has them paint everything. If you bought a Phantom back in 04 and 05 and 06, the warranty handbook said it was a global warranty. And you were like, why? And again, this is one of those things where you're like, oh, exceed expectations. And you're like, you don't even understand the customer, dude. This guy, these people that are buying that car in 2004 for $300,000.
Yeah, forget about it.
Were loading it into their yacht and taking it off to Monaco. And the warranty book meant that when they drove it around in Monaco and broke down, the warranty was good in Monaco. You took it to Africa, it was good in Africa. I mean, and even still in the US, you could be in the middle of Wyoming and that car breaks down. Rolls-Royce pays to truck it to the nearest Rolls-Royce service center. No questions asked. Now, in fairness, what you do after that is your problem. But it is. It's unbelievable value for money.
I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize, and like just kind of touching the story back in those days, 04, 05, the type of person buying the car comparative to the type of people that have now, since the barrier of entry is completely different, buying those same cars that was once bought by somebody back in 04, it's just changed the game completely.
Do they even finance those cars in 04?
So that is actually one of the craziest parts. I mean, I think it was like, it's I don't know if it's Top Gear line or whatever, when they're like, yeah, this guy's like writing checks with crayons. So that there was no such thing as Rolls-Royce Financial Services in 2004. I think Bentley Financial Services was maybe like 07 or 08. It was a division of Volkswagen Credit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could only finance. There was no leasing.
Right.
And I think I don't know if it's 2012, 2013, maybe 2011 is when leasing started for Rolls-Royce.
I will say there was a joke in Entourage when they bought the Phantom. He's like, "Come on, Vince, you know everyone leases Rolls-Royce or something like that."
Yeah.
But that was like 06, 07.
Yeah.
That
So I
show would have
mean,
been.
I don't. There were
Shout out
companies.
Entourage. They might not be accurate either.
Listen, there were. That's where these third-party leasing companies brought it up from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in fairness, it goes even further back, right? So, look at beyond the BMW age of Rolls-Royce, which is like 2001, all the way back. There was no. You couldn't finance a Ferrari.
That worked.
I mean, the stories of like Ferrari dealers where Daytonas were just scattered across the parking lot and Ferrari dealers were going broke. And that car is now, $1 million. You couldn't finance them. Nobody wanted that paper because it's from a collateral standpoint, you're like, totally unpredictable market. We have no idea how many of them they're actually going to build. And at that time, if you need to borrow money to buy a Ferrari or a Rolls-Royce or a Bentley, you probably shouldn't be buying one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's bigger risk at that point.
Right. So those products have completely changed the game for supercar ownership. And it's without question the reason that the business has changed, not just in the United States, but globally. I mean, the culture in Asia is you do not finance those things that you don't need, but you want.
Right.
So if somebody finds out that you financed your Rolls-Royce, there's like a whole, like, especially if you have a business relationship, it changes to, whoa, why do you have that just to trick me into thinking that you're that successful? Is that what this is?
Which is probably the right way to be in this current day and age, to be honest with you.
So in fairness, it's interesting because the risk that a lot of these banks are willing to take has dropped off. The mark, obviously, from a whole bunch of different reasons, but even in the near term, the risk tolerance has changed. And so, in fairness, if you are actually able to get a competitive rate loan product today, it almost speaks more to your financial health and
100%.
your profile than it would alternatively. So the folks that I'd watch out for, and this is very sort of, pontificating, is somebody that comes to me and says, I'm going to go get, a Urus this weekend. And a week later, you're like, so did you oh yeah, the numbers just didn't make sense. And, whatever the case is, like, you didn't get approved. Yeah. You didn't get approved.
Right.
Nice try.
So
It's that simple.
Right.
I think when it comes to the leasing, or at least the financing side of it, like when you're talking about that side of the world looks at it in a little different lens, I'm on board with that because of the barrier to entry and how it's all operated. But there's a case to be made for leverage that I feel like in today's day and age needs to be notified, because we live in a world where money's not physical. 95% of it's digital. So the money-making systems that exist now are not traditional. So being able to leverage capital in its own right way can be said. Not saying that it's the right decision or the smart move to make when you look at it actually down on the numbers, but there's a certain point there, depending on how the person makes their money, that leveraging the capital by financing is the correct play.
Correct.
Depending on the situation.
Correct.
But
Always
that's
been
not
that way.
yes and no.
So I think kind of to that point you made at the beginning there, which is like, you guys see the statistic about like 64% of people that went to Coachella financed their tickets to go to Coachella?
Yeah.
100%.
It's crazy.
So that's, to me, as someone who is now spending time in the financial services side, that kind of statistic, to your point, is like, what are you talking about?
Top signal.
What are you talking about, right?
Top
Sell
signal.
signal. Sell signal if there's ever been one.
Is that's the departure
Correct.
from where you're applying business sense
Correct.
to using someone else's money
Right.
to facilitate something so that you can use your cash to go make more money.
Correct.
That's not financing a ticket to go watch people drink beer out of
No,
cowboy boots.
Correct.
for
Right?
sure not. Yeah.
But 64%, 6.5 out of 10 human beings that went to Coachella borrowed money to walk through the door.
crazy.
That's insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they borrowed money for the ticket, you can almost bet that everything else they spent while they were there was on credit, obviously. And you know that it wasn't paid for when that next credit card bill came in.
100%.
And that's to attend a concert.
It's all good. We're heading in a fucking amazing direction, and I'm excited as hell for it right now because it's there's an underlying problem to that
100%.
that nobody's not that no one's talking about. 'Cause people are talking about it, like even companies like a firm, stuff like that. Like I had a buddy of mine ask me, quite literally asked me, I dabble in the financial markets, I would say, and I had a buddy of mine ask me, he's like, hey, should I be taking some put options right now on a firm? And I asked him, I go, why the fuck are you asking me that question? Like what is prompting
Right.
your mind to ask me that question? He's like, well, you know, a lot of these people, it seems like their numbers are just cranking. A lot of people can't afford these things, so they're using a firm. And I was like, okay, then you're thinking about it in the incorrect sense. I was like, a firm makes their money and makes a killing off of the amount of people that can't afford that and uses their systems. So if anything, you should be taking calls on a firm
Right.
if you're seeing those numbers go up. But at the underlying point that doesn't change is the sheer amount of people, like, and all the statistics, all the, like, Amex comes out with their quarterly earnings, everything like that. The amount of these credit card companies, that's one of the things that people don't watch to see the true state of the economy is the lending. When they come out with quarterly earnings, what's going on with them? Fuck how much Amazon's selling during Christmas time. What is American Express reporting in Q4?
Right.
That tells the current economic state. Those numbers are increasingly going up. And it's not because people are leveraging in a proper way. They don't have enough money to pay the things. They have to cover necessities. So wants are no longer being able to purchase. It is, I'll credit my wants and I'll buy my needs. And we're talking about rent, insurance, car payment, and then everything else, credit card. And when that limit runs out, you're fucked.
100%.
Well, so much of it too is I think still just even accessibility. It's like a lot of people that couldn't finance a supercar didn't. And there's probably people that could afford to. They had the cash maybe, but they don't want to tie up that much money in a car. They'd rather finance it. But now I can finance it. So now I'm going to get the car.
Right.
It's like, hey, I can afford the new washer and dryer, right?
Right.
It's $2,000. I have more than $2,000 in my bank account. I could buy it if I want. But hey, Costco is offering 2 years, 0% financing, and I only have to pay $100 a month. Why give them $2,000 today when I can just do $100 a month? So, I mean, to one sense, there's an element of people are buying what they can't afford.
Correct.
On the other sense, it's just the option's there. And to a lot of people, it feels like a better option than cash, even though they could pay cash.
Right.
Because they
So-
might want to leverage, even if they're not even using the cash. A lot of people are still like, I could use that cash elsewhere, sort of
It's a
mentality.
security thing.
Yeah.
Just to be able to look, it's there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
No, and so that's in fairness, it's sort of a very interesting different side of the same coin, right?
Right.
Because if we go back and think about like our parents or maybe our grandparents, and you were like, yeah, like this new, I've got this A12 outside and I leased it.
Mm-hmm.
And your grandparents were like, you leased what? Rented a car? They were like, no, you buy things, you write a check and you pay for them, you know?
Right.
So I don't want to sound like that when
I got
say
an
that.
8-year car note,
Right.
you know?
So the flip side, right? Okay, 0% finance, and some of them maybe did say, hey, financing the ticket to go to the concert was a great idea, and we sit here and we go, because we are, lucky enough to have that money in the bank, where we'd go, why the fuck would you finance a ticket to go to Coachella?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it is, you temper that kind of impression with that is other levels of consumers. It is a need. Now, attending Coachella is not a need, right? Or buying a supercar for that matter. But
Depends on who you ask.
the credit usage per capita, right, is basically this kind of overarching sort of thought, where it is in the United States and these other developed markets. I mean, I heard one of the craziest stories the other day from a buddy of mine in Europe, that there is some chain of electronics stores in, I think it's France. They will not allow you to pay cash. Their entire business is based on you financing the television that they're going to sell you.
Oh,
And they are in the finance business by way of selling electronics.
Yeah, the electronics, they don't give a fuck about it.
Right.
What is my financing?
Correct.
terms?
And what rate am I selling them? What am I buying the money for? And what am
Yeah.
I selling it to this guy for? What's the spread? And do I think this guy can pay?
It's just a vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fucking genius.
a firm made things easy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Can I tell you what I think? And I think now that kind of like this episode is able to give me this thought that I'm going to say it now in my head, compiled for the first time. What I kind of think part of it is what happens now. And I think the problem with like the looming credit issue that's growing before, back in the day, 09, 08, let's just call it like the early 2000s. No social media, no nothing, right? Very little Facebook, kind of half-assed, right? Your life did not need to be a highlight reel anymore. They lived their life as it was. You went through a 7-day period where you didn't do shit. You went through a 7-day period where you didn't do shit. That was your life. That's fine.
Yep.
Because you saw somebody 14 days later, you had something good to tell them, phone call, text message, whatever was happening. It's what it is. Now, the need for your life to be a consistent highlight reel, because I'm only going to show the good shit on Instagram. I'm not going to show you the bad shit. The need for people's life to be a highlight reel is causing them to put themselves in financial distress. And everybody that's on the other side is banking off of it and printing money from it. But the massive majority of people, the 99.9% of people on the planet, they're just doing that just to create some type of highlight reel for people that they don't even give a fuck about.
Yep.
And that's all that it is created. That I need to go to Coachella. I need to go to Stagecoach. I need to show that I have a nice car. I need to show that my apartment's nice.
There's people financing vacations.
That is ridiculous.
I mean, if you want to talk about, and so especially if you dabble right in the markets and you, like most others, are incredibly frustrated with the headlines that get written by, because a headline can totally swing the market and it's based on no fundamentals whatsoever, right?
My structure that I'm looking at that is almost not foolproof, but it's there. It can completely get ripped out by Trump saying, hey, we're just going to do 80% this weekend with China tariffs.
Right. And 2 or 3 days, the whole thing sort of corrects itself after people remember, how to do math. The thing that does, as somebody who has been in the car business, does worry me is this change in behavior as it relates to, so when you say like, okay, if I'm standing there in, Best Buy or whatever, and they say, okay, finance at 0% interest for 2 years. Sure. I mean, objectively, that makes sense from a cash flow perspective. Even if I'm taking $1,500 of that $2,000 and putting it into a Merrill Lynch account or whatever and trading and hopefully making 10, 11, 12% of my money, that's better than paying it all to Best Buy.
3% on my money.
Right. Any amount.
Yeah.
Literally any amount.
A savings account,
Right.
Yeah.
0.25%
Yeah, I'm
on my
making more
money.
than writing a check to Best Buy. So that objectively is, but that's not how they make their money. They make their money when that person misses a payment. And
That's why Bank of
my
America sucks.
concern is you have kids in line with their parents at stores and who access the same websites that we all access and see this story of finance. And I say kids, okay, middle school maybe and above, right? And as they're coming into the world, they are becoming consumers. They are buying things and they get jobs and they go to school. Is this notion that it's okay to finance anything, borrow money on the furniture in your house, the groceries, the fucking utility bill, And that musical Broadway show, if we enter a situation where liquidity dries up, it's not like 1939. It's way worse than 1939. It's way worse than 1939. So my hope is that as these things, your Affirms, your Klarnas, your, buy now, Amex, buy now, pay here, right? Yeah. What Amex cardholder needs buy now, pay later? The fucking card annual fee starts at $195 a year or whatever. But they have it, to your point, because that is an important fundamental difference, is even in the highline car business is like, okay, let's take, for example, a Revuelto, right? 700, that nearest makes no difference, some side of 700 grand. And that is a shitload of money. So if I'm sitting here going, okay, so I can borrow today's money, you're probably looking at somewhere if I'm financing, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8%, between 7 and 8. How much does that $600,000 that I wouldn't be writing a check for make if I have it applied in another part of my business, another part of my life, sitting in a trading account? Does it make more than 8%? It fucking better, right?
Yeah,
it fucking better, right? So that is the only reason that people still finance this stuff. I mean, you go to other parts of the world, right? Mexico, South Africa, interest rates are like 14, 16%. I mean, I still remember going into a grocery store in Puerto Vallarta like 10 years ago, and that same 2 years finance at 0% was taped on a refrigerator, and it was 19.9% for 2 years. So the thing that, in fairness, obviously what's happening, America is a developed economy and it's credit based, and so is all of them are credit based. But that same credit approach has transcended developing economies around the world. How do you sell someone that it's a better use of their money to borrow at 20% than it is to keep it? It's not. That person has to make 25% cash on cash for it to pencil.
You don't sell it to them, though. That's not the point of it. There's no selling it to them.
Right.
It's the moment. The money's leaving now, or a little more might leave later. And that's how 99% of people live their lives, is the exact moment that they're in.
Correct.
If it seems like maybe a better decision right in that second, I don't have to give $100 out right now. I'll give you 20, and I'll give you 120 parceled out down the line. Sure, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's a monthly payment.
So
it doesn't matter how much money I'm giving the bank out of that. It's, hey, I can afford, what are we talking about here? $2,400 a month?
Yeah.
Whatever car. I can afford $2,400 a month. I don't care if $800 of that is principal. I want the car, and I can afford $2,400 a month. So that's the math I did. That's all it was.
Right.
I can't afford 220 grand down. I don't have that, but I can afford $2,400 a month.
Yeah.
So to get the car,
and that is that you've described. It doesn't matter if it's Highline or you're buying a Toyota. You've described automotive finance in a nutshell.
That's it.
I mean, name another consumer product where if you have the highest tier credit, 800 plus score, fabulous debt to income, a mortgage paid perfectly, a good job, longevity, where a lender will advance you 110% of the sticker price of a depreciating asset. There isn't one.
No. Mm-hmm. When you say it out loud.
Because when you say that, it's the most retarded thing you've ever fucking heard.
100%. That's why I'm laughing. When you really say what it is at its bare bones, it's fucking ridiculous.
And that is the entire commodity car business.
It's crazy.
The need of transportation business functions on that Bible.
And Lightstream will give you the title.
One more time?
Lightstream will give you the title.
Oh, yeah.
They won't even collateralize the loan of the car.
Because they don't give a fuck about the car.
No.
That's not what they give
you know
a
what?
shit about.
That's just That's just admin fees that we got to deal with if we take your title. We checked you out. We trust you. Here's the money.
Right. And in fairness, I happen to believe outstandingly disruptive business model.
Yeah.
Because you can get approved with Lightstream. You don't talk to anybody.
Right.
You fill out a credit application. I think the max is 100K, 100 and something
The max
like that.
is 100K. Yeah.
And you submit your wiring information and a wire shows up in your account. To your point, you don't even need to give them the title.
Mm-hmm. They might ask you to verify some details.
Of course, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. But
Yeah.
that's
no
wild.
title. No title. They just
That is
wire you
wild.
the money.
Yep.
You buy the car, cash structure.
Yeah. And you tick a box that says, I'm going to use it for what I said
Yes.
I'm going to use it for.
I'm going to use this for a car.
Yeah.
My last car, surely this is fine. So I got Lightstream on my first car purchase, and then I sold that car and bought another car without like changing my loan because what did it matter, right? It's like, yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
So the one car loan, I had 2 different cars during that one car loan.
So again, incredibly disruptive model.
Right. It made it
Because-
so easy.
Right. Most banks, the inverse is they want that next transaction to take place. Obviously, but majority of it is because of all the fees.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's where a lot
It's
of the money.
it's all the fees.
Yeah.
You know, the acquisition cost nowadays on a high line contract is like $3,000. Some of them I've seen as high as like $5,000.
What's an
especially if
acquisition
it's-
cost?
Right.
Acquisition fee. What's the acquisition?
Yeah, it's processing fee.
Yeah.
Right.
What are we doing
And
here?
The craziest part is there is a segment of the highline finance business that is subprime. Now, if you want to watch somebody's eyes get wide and their mouth open and be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Go to anywhere else in the world and tell them that there is a way for a subprime buyer to finance a highline car.
Yeah.
There isn't a bank.
How much money do you need to have to buy a Huracan?
It's a tough question to answer.
And I mean just from a perspective of being able to go get approved somewhere. Not like what you think is financially
So in fairness,
smart.
it's actually it's as opposed to money in the bank, it is way more based on your cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Your personal cash flow. So the stuff, I mean, some of the stuff that's happening today, honestly, because so many people have used Adobe Acrobat to edit tax returns and stuff, is there are I forget the name of the tool, but there is a tool now where you're getting some of these highline lenders that you fill in a whole bunch of information and they log into basically like a team viewer of your bank account to verify that what you've told them is what's happening in your bank account is actually real.
Right.
I
know you're talking about.
Yeah,
Send you a link and then.
correct.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
Turbo something,
Yeah,
but
Team Viewer is an app that does that.
great. So exactly. And this functions the same way. I guess I'm sure there's a whole bunch of banking rules involved, but
for sure.
it's more about cash flow. And so,
12 grand a month. Can I get a Huracan?
so it's going to be a combination
My
of
rent's $1,500.
Yeah. So that, in fairness, as a profile,
Mm-hmm.
typically is run for the hills. Now again, it really does come down to it's almost impossible to cookie cutter and say, if you make this a month and your expenses are this and you have this sitting in a bank account, that you're going to get approved.
Mm-hmm.
But a general rule of
Depends
thumb,
on how much you can put down
Correct.
to.
general rule of thumb is this: it's always going to be more difficult to get a loan on an exotic car or a highline car or collector car if they think that it is going to be your primary vehicle. That goes to behavioral psychology versus the credit profile. That goes to, you're fucking crazy, right? Then you have the layer, which is, okay, I've got 2 other cars. Maybe I have a car, my wife or spouse or partner, whoever it is, has another car, right? They see that on the profile. I'm looking to get my fun car, right? let's say I'm trying to finance a 1996 C4S for, car's 180 grand. I'm willing to put half down. My annual income is $350,000 a year. I've got a mortgage payment that is today's market 6 or 7 grand, right? That's $300,000. Now, questions will be asked. Do you pay the mortgage 100%? Do you share the mortgage with another income earner in the home? And what they're now trying to dissect is, what is your true debt to income level? And what is your net after tax earnings and your net expenditures? And do you actually have, number one, strong payment history with all your other meat and potato stuff, credit cards and home loans? And do you have the cash bandwidth to make that payment? And then the conversation after that is, which is the whole reason people, they don't ask for bank accounts to see your cash flow. They ask for bank accounts to understand what happens if the shit hits the fan for you. Do you have the discipline and the runway to survive if it ever goes pear-shaped?
Mm-hmm.
That's the real reason for that. Because your tax returns tell you what you earn, right? Because most people don't want to fucking lie to the IRS. So it's a
But
tough,
they'll let it the tax return.
right? Which is all just bonkers to me. I don't think most people understand that, if you edit a tax return and email it to somebody, it's 2 different felonies and each one of them is 20 years if you get caught. Which is a very, very, very quick way, by the way, to get blacklisted by a bank. And they won't tell you, they'll never admit it. But if you ever for the rest of your life, and it can even be if there are dependents in the household with attached social security numbers, they get flagged. So it's just not. Yeah, anyways, bad juju regardless.
Yeah, probably a bad idea. Probably
Yeah,
a bad
just
idea.
in general, don't commit fraud.
Seems like a low bar,
should be,
low bar to.
But we've got people financing tickets to
hit.
Coachella, so
Nothing fucking makes sense
Yeah.
anymore.
and we got people going to prison daily.
right. So it's again sort of a tough question to answer. That picture that you described of somebody who's making 200 grand a year, living in a $1,500 a month, maybe literally renting a room, and has decided, they make 150 grand a year and they've got the cash for that $1,800 M3 payment or whatever. There is some of that happens.
But why get the M3 when the depreciation is going to be the same as the Huracan?
Because
now I can get the Huracan.
This is
I
where
lost the same amount of money.
This is where
even
the
though
commodity car business
as
and the
much.
commodity buyer moves into this echelon, which is this supercar realm. We look at these transactions, for better or for worse, first emotionally, immediately after that, it's a business transaction. That's not the commodity car purchaser. The commodity car purchaser is, like we were talking about earlier, I see it, I want it.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get it? Tell me the pathway. How do I go down the yellow brick road so at the end of it, that fucking car is in my driveway? That's all I care about. We sit there and think about things like, all right, so if I own this thing, okay, the payments, this, that, and the other, plus the fact, okay, depreciation. And another thing that's becoming a lot more common is how do I get an idea as to what the payoff on this thing is
X amount of
2
time.
years from today?
Yeah.
So I can balance this, how much more am I paying in cost of funds
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to true depreciation? So that conversation, I mean, it just doesn't, it's why, in fairness, it's the whole crux of new car leasing is that beautiful shit show. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I think if whoever came along with the idea of leasing a car at the beginning described it today and it didn't exist in the economics, you'd be like, so for the first 30 months of the 36 months, you're upside down. If that person defaults, you lose money. Correct. Why would we do that? Right?
Because we're in the business of lending money.
Correct.
That's why. That's what people, you guys, this is the big thing everyone forgets. They need to lend you the money. That's then what they do. There's no business structure. We're not doing anything.
Yeah.
They need it out.
Yeah.
If you separated the financial arms from each of these car companies They'd evaporate.
Yeah.
I mean, part of Tesla's, original sort of secret sauce, if you guys remember when the Model S first came out and there was those bonkers lease structures, or they called them lease structures on the website, where it was like guaranteed buyback. I mean, credit where credit's due. It's because Elon had gone to the banks and negotiated and said, I will take 100% of the risk. I need a competitive price point. So the recipe is this, by the way, a little bit of a secret behind the door. The demand curve for any car, really any car, 10% down of selling price or MSRP and 1% of MSRP a month. That is the secret sauce. That at that price point, you have almost inelastic demand. It just becomes, they're just going to start. Now, you have to have all the other rest, right? Your brand value and a fucking car that people want and all that other stuff. But if you want to go back and look at, like, how did GM unload all those first EV Hummers? All of a sudden, the lease went from like $1,800 a month to like
$600 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zero.
It was like, shocker. It was like a $90,000 truck, $100,000 truck
Shake our hand and you can have it.
for $800 or $900 a month.
And
Now,
a pack of Skittles.
also, right, if you have a pulse, come in here and sign paperwork and we'll let you take it home, is that EVs are the anomaly. There is an anomaly within that whole EV space. But this 10 in 1 rule generally is that sweet spot. And Elon at the beginning said he would take all the risk. You give me a financial product where I can market my car with this 10 in 1 rule effectively, and I will take 100% of the risk. I just need you to lend the cash. That is the only reason people bought those cars, was because on paper, again, when you're sitting at the time, right? Model S was a $100,000 car.
Yeah.
So your S-Class money, 7 Series money, you are, whoever you are, you're either a business owner, you're a senior executive, you are one of the top 5% income earners, right, in the country. Right. So you do look at some of that stuff in a more sort of business transaction sense, and you're sitting there going, hold on a second, this is kind of interesting. This has been de-risked because you said on paper you're going to buy it back. I'll try this whole drive around in a microwave thing and see what happens.
Right.
And so it is. If you separated the financial arm from car companies, you'd probably see a 60% drop off almost overnight in new car business. They can't afford it, and it's a vicious cycle. You have to make sure you got liquidity and you can lend money so that people buy your cars. So that then the dealership has more floor line left, so they can buy more that come out of the factory.
Yeah. Why do you love cars?
I honestly I've been a car person since literally as long as I can remember. But my family's like cars.
What kind of car person?
In fairness, it started with older cars. And I love the story behind the cars, like that Porsche Toyota story. I mean, most people, and obviously the people at Porsche would be like, it's never happened, okay. Right? So, but Toyota saved Porsche. Most people know the story about how BMW almost went broke. I mean, BMW almost became a part of the Mercedes, part of Daimler. And a lot of these car brands go through these, and so for me, it was
profitable business. They're making it, it's changed, but
right.
It's really not that profitable.
So one of my favorite CEOs from the car business the last 25 years.
Carlos Ghosn.
Not that guy. But I give him a lot of credit for, escaping in a cardboard box or whatever that was. And I think there was something that popped up on him like a week ago. He's like turned up in Lebanon teaching like economics. And I remember reading the article and thinking, it actually would be probably kind of cool to go to class and be like, that dude escaped legal persecution in Japan in a container. And now he's sitting up here. He's like, probably, he's probably got a Bentley parked outside, right? Anyway, but a guy named Alan Mullally. And there was a fucking epic Stanford talk that he gives. It's on YouTube. It's like an hour long. It's way too fucking long, but there's like a couple really sick nuggets that are in there. And he talks about Ford, and he talks about at the time that Ford, I think Ford was on track to like lose like $16 billion at the end of whatever year this was. And he talked about how Ford needed to go, and this is when we first started hearing about this stuff, right? Shared platforms, right? So as car guys, you know, you can't call yourself a car guy today and not know about the 4-liter V8 that is in every single Audi, Porsche, Bentley, and Lambo product. You can't talk about the 4-liter V8 that's in every single Mercedes-Benz and now Aston product with a V8, right? So to your point, it is unbelievably challenging to manufacture a car that when it leaves the plant, there's a net income that's generated at that time. It's almost impossible. You know, but so to the point, like cars was, for me, it was the story. It was the story. And then, I mean, I took German for 5 years in school because I wanted to design cars for BMW. And then I figured out I can't, I'm not wired that way. And I went to go work for a BMW dealer. I didn't understand what a franchise was. And I showed up there and I was like, what do you mean this is owned by BMW? You know? And I got hooked on the high that comes from handing somebody the keys to a new car or a used car.
Mm-hmm.
And how, because it is, I mean, for most people, right? Most people, even BMW buyers, that is the second most expensive thing you're ever going to buy. And it is emotional, especially even at BMW, right? Again, if you need transportation, Toyota, Hyundai, Kia, you know, whatever. Nobody needs a BMW.
Mm-hmm.
I also happen to love BMWs. I mean, at that time, I would fucking argue until I passed out that they built the best premium segment car on the road. This is 2009, 2008, right? And so that, and then I had a mentor at that time who sat me down and showed me the franchised car business on paper. And I got hooked. And, you know, it's not a complicated business. We don't design them. We don't build them. We just have to sell them and fix them. But that I think, in addition to the stories, is what got me hooked on, to cars.
Hooked on phonics, baby.
Yeah. You know,
and then that eventually evolved into supercars?
Doing it for a living. I mean, you know,
so like Lambo, Ferrari, McLaren.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite out of those?
I've got to categorize that answer differently. So from a science perspective, no question, McLaren. There's no question.
Someone gives David
the keys,
a fat stack of money, and says, go get either a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, or a McLaren of your choosing.
And it's a car it's a new car. It's made today.
Yeah. So
made in the last 4 years.
Ferrari.
Okay.
Yeah. 812 GTS. 812 GTS.
Great fucking answer.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of some of the newer Ferrari product.
Mm-hmm.
I think that car will go down as one of Ferrari's. Like for me, even like I think the 812 Comp obviously is an unbelievable piece of machinery. I happen to think that the F12 TDF is that car, which again is just you could park that like a Huayra, right? You could park that car in a room and sit there and smoke a cigar and look at it, and you don't ever have to turn it on, and it's just one of the most stunning pieces of science. So from a I guess a brand story perspective, it's without question is Ferrari. If I wanted one of those supercars that I could get in every day and drive like a supercar and it's not going to break, it's a Lambo. And that's a violent change from where that story was 20 years ago.
For sure.
But you can drive, out of those three, the only one I would tell somebody you could actually drive that car every single day, and I mean drive it every single day. And when you come out of the office and turn it on in the afternoon and you're ready to go home and it's going to turn on and take you home.
It's the Audi Huracan.
Even the Aventadors. I mean, even the Aventadors.
Don't get crazy.
No. So
David,
don't get
crazy.
The only thing you really have to worry about with those cars, and this is where, so I've never been somebody that gets into like all the mods and all the, you know, I like.
Oh, David, you're missing out. Okay,
right.
Look
No, so I will say this, like some of the stuff like R1 does, like
crazy shit.
I never thought I could like a 992 Turbo S more until I saw what R1 did to that car, and the sound it makes is just biblical. But that's, in fairness, the only time where you really start to see Lambo reliability even become a question is people do Lambo things to them. And they modify an exhaust, they'll do an ECU flash. That is really the only time where those cars that I've seen start to give up. And so I do. And what frustrates me the most is that, again, the science and engineering that goes into a McLaren is next level. I mean, it's literally.
Apparently, that's the same thing with McLaren. It's when people start tuning them and modding them that they really have the issues.
Yeah.
And then not driving them.
Right.
Part
So
number 3.
that, in fairness, applies to any car made in the United Kingdom. Okay. I would tell you just in general, right?
Yep.
Jaguar, Land Rover. The kiss of death is thinking in your head that the car you bought was designed to sit in the garage for 10 days at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like so violently the opposite of how it was actually designed. And then people are shocked. We're like, oh, I came back from like 2 months summer in the south of Europe and I tried to get in it and all the fucking lights are on the dash. Right. Okay. Well, you know, did you have a caretaker or a buddy that could come and, you know, so, but yeah, that would,
Have a
for
buddy
me,
that you trust.
for me, it would be an A12 GTS.
Yeah. It's a good answer.
It's a
For me, it
fucking
would be
perfect
an-
answer.
for me-
I'm
for me,
on
it would
that
be
board
a
with
12
him now. With like that might become one of the greatest, not just GTS, the 812 platform. Go down line, probably that generation, this generation's holy grail.
I think, what is going to be very interesting is looking back at today, like even right now, 10 years from now, because there's nobody that can tell you what the landscape's going to look like 10 years from now. There's nobody that's able to tell you this percentage of the Lamborghini product range is going to be is a full combustion drivetrain. There's nobody. And so if we look at the sort of, you know, the collector car business historically values those last of, right? You know, last of the air-cooled 911s. I mean, the fucking C4S 993 is $200,000. That's unbelievable. One of the craziest statistics on that side of the business, right? So the older car stuff, and in fairness, also some of the exotic stuff fits in there. The U.S. car business on an annual basis is worth like $1.3 trillion. How much do you think the collector car market, the insurable value of the collector car market was in 2022?
2022?
Yeah.
Ooh. You want to go first?
I have no clue.
It's going to be higher. A lot higher. Like a disgusting amount. Because the values of those cars, especially now, might be even higher. But the value of the
So
cars,
the entire U.S. car
Insurable
market,
value.
the entire U.S. car market, car sales, parts, service, the entire machine
fucking
is 1.3 trillion. Just the insurable value of cars in the U.S. in 2022 that are driven less than 2 times a week was $2 trillion.
Jeez. Wow.
$2 trillion. Just in America.
Jesus.
Just in America.
Jesus.
So there's a whole other side to the collector car, exotic car business that a lot of people don't talk. Insurance.
Oh.
Okay, so Haggerty. So like talking about that guy in France, right? It's like I'm a bank, but I'm in the bank by way of like fucking selling microwaves.
Yeah.
Haggerty, everything that Haggerty is doing is to widen its funnel for the specialty car insurance business that it runs.
100%.
And it is without question the biggest player. You've got others. There's out there, you know, there's Grundy. They do a good job, family-owned business, and some of these other interesting players. But that when I saw that statistic, this is probably about a year ago, and then you wonder why you're like, is it, you know, Rolls-Royce Financial Service, Lambo, Ferrari Financial Service? Like, is there really like, is there that many people like buying and financing these cars through these different pathways for all these businesses to exist. And then you find out that the insurable value of the U.S. collector car market is $2 trillion. So that's when the business of it changes. And now you're not talking about like some of these folks do, right? That have 30, 40, 50 cars. It's an asset class. It's an asset class that shows up on a fucking balance sheet when somebody's doing their taxes at the end of the year. And that's where there really are. It's two separate conversations. The guys like, in fairness, like us that have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 fun cars, we're not sitting there thinking about, fucking the hold value on this thing for 20 years and a compound, average growth rate and fucking this and appreciate, the inflation. But there are clearly a shitload of people who do treat it like that, and it's funny. Like, so I was talking to, Austin, has this gated 599 and he's talking about it. And I said,
he's trying to move it.
Yeah. And I said, one of the guys you could talk to if a car is out here is this guy up in Newbury Park, Wob Cars. Rob. The name Wob comes from the fact that, like, I think it was his niece couldn't say the word Rob as a kid, so she said Wob. So he decided that was it. But this is a Ivy School educated economics degree, ended up in banking, and went from banking to managing car collections, and is one of the largest sellers on Bring a Trailer.
Wow.
I think if not the largest, it was one of like the top 5.
Yeah.
When you talk to someone like him, as a car guy who's been in the business, especially on the new car side, because he doesn't do any, right?
Right.
0 new car. The level of like eccentricity that exists in this, and he'll have a tank outside. He'll have like a Mercedes-Benz bust from the 70s, and then he's got a 1 of 4 special configuration 599 that was like, done for like the Sultan of Brunei. That's like $7 million. And for him, you can tell when you're talking to him, it's a commodity. The emotion, like the storytelling is there, the value building in whatever that commodity is there. But this is about, I bring it in, it costs me this, and I sell it for that.
Yeah.
Next.
Well, I asked a very big exotic dealer, who you would recognize the name. One time I said, so what's your favorite car? And he goes, honestly, now it's hot dogs and hamburgers, whatever sells. I drive my Model X, and whatever sells the fastest, it's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
You're
So
like, wow,
you do get entirely
how disappointing.
So you do get desensitized.
For sure.
Now that being said, you can still tell the specialty of, when you get into some of this stuff. But in fairness, the dealers that exist in this end of the business that tends to be the mentality, because they've removed emotion from decision making.
That's how you have to be in business.
They've removed emotion from
Well, I mean, there's also just levels. We've reached a certain level of desensitization
100%.
just from how deep into all of it we've gotten.
Right.
And I'm sure you have, with how much you've worked on with all of it and stuff like that. Like, if past Gavin was looking at today Gavin and looking at some of the opportunities I pass up, or, I don't have time for that, he'd slap me in the face.
Yeah.
Go, what?
Yeah.
You're not going to say yes to that and go? I don't have time.
Right.
I'm busy. Make time.
Right.
But there's a certain level of desensitization.
100%.
So it is what it is.
100%. And
You're good.
the other thing I think that cannot be discounted about the specialty car business, being in the specialty car business, is how cash intense it is. Again, if somebody came to you with, this is how much money you make selling exotic cars, do you want to do this? I mean, again, a little bit of behind the curtain. If you were an exotic car, new car dealer in 2018, and your net return on sales was above 2.5%, you were a fucking rock star.
Jeez.
most of these stores were,
Tough.
it was an ego thing as a big dealer group. It was like, yeah, I own 35 other stores. I've got a Bentley dealer. I own 25 other stores. I've got a Ferrari store. It doesn't make any money. Ferrari obviously being the exception, right? Ferrari's 6 stores. But if I came to anyone today and said, hey, you want to like give me $10 million and like maybe we'll make like 2.25% on it? You'd be like, no, it's not inflation, bro. It's like, I literally lose a percentage a year giving you that money and having you do that. So that is another part of it where if you don't have, but that goes into discipline, right? About just business in general, is if you don't have that emotion removed, you will set money on fire really quickly.
What it is it becomes an art and it becomes a skill set. For example, this is me talking about what you said, especially car market. Someone like that, you have to have an element of understanding the history and the emotion that comes from the car so that you can portray it and display it onto others, potential buyers. Simultaneously speaking, you have to know no matter how much I believe it and how much I see it and how much I try to BS sell it to people, I look at it from a black and white lens. Especially, again, at the end of the day, it's fucking numbers on a screen, it's values like that. The vehicle that is being utilized for can have a story and it makes this feel good and somebody's going to feel warm about it and it's fucking fantastic. But fuck all that.
Couldn't have said it better.
That's it.
We got to get into guest questions.
Are we done?
We're like,
fuck me, dude. I had so much shit. Oh my God. Oh, sorry. All right, let's do it. I want to talk to you after this, by the way.
That's okay.
You have time?
Yes, I have time.
Cool. Let's do the next questions.
Yeah. Sorry. We're running out of time.
You're good. You're good.
This has been fantastic.
Yeah. But I am interested to see what you say to our guest questions, which everyone gets. What's the most overrated car today?
The most overrated car today. I'm gonna go the highly unpopular opinion. I'm gonna go with a 992 generation GT3.
Super unpopular.
I could kiss you on the mouth right now.
992 GT3.
Why do you say that?
Shout out JP.
And I'm not you can't blame all of the 992 GT3 buyers for this because a little bit is just I just genuinely believe the car was overbuilt.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw a 911 GT3 or any of the track-oriented road cars on the road 10, 15 years ago, you thought, okay, that's a fucking car person. Like that person, that's hard. That person, whoever that is hardcore. That car's expensive. Definitely didn't need that. They don't build a lot of them, so they had to get it somehow. GT3s became like G-Wagons.
Yeah.
I mean, like the number of people that would like roll up to, the Hotel Bel Air or, fucking Beverly Hills Hotel valet, like dressed for brunch in a GT3. And you're like, what the?
Well, you got to understand the age the people that were just the M4 owners, all those people grew up and they needed to fill that fucking market.
Perfectly described.
We got to put more.
Yeah, perfectly described. Yeah. Which would be like, if I hadn't said GT3, 992 GT3, the next one down would be like, But and that's what's tough. Like I actually like that. The current generation M3 and M4, I actually think are excellent cars. And I think that's important to note. I think the GT3 as a car is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wouldn't want to be somebody who owns that car 2 years from now because I think they're going to lose a little bit of money.
A Porsche.
Yeah.
Losing money.
Yeah.
Depreciating.
Yeah.
Too many
it's funny. If you look at if you go pre-pandemic, you were able, I still remember looking at it because one of the cars on my bucket list is a 991.2 Turbo S. There were dealers advertising that car in January of 2020, right? So 2 months before the pandemic locked in. It was on the website for $40,000 off. The car's 10 grand over sticker, like as soon as you drive off the property with it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as somebody who obviously knows the car business, and I was looking at ordering a 992 Turbo during the sort of pandemic, and even like buddies that worked at Porsche stores were like, Dave, like friends and families 25 over, and I'm like, you gotta be out of your fucking mind, but yeah, I do. I think again, we'll see some settling down, I'm sure, of the market, but I could be wrong.
What's the most underrated car today?
So I happen to think that the outgoing generation Audi R8 is a car that is grossly undervalued by the collector car community.
Collector car.
Yeah, I think that the outgoing, this last generation of that R8 GT.
Yeah.
If I had a couple, $200,000 and an extra spot in the garage, put it on a trickle charger, put it under balloon, make sure everything's running once a month, and 25 years from now, I think, again, for us in our generation, and that's how the collector car market's always moved, is it's usually something that's happened in our lives that was meaningful, and that's what's driving, muscle cars, right? For the current generation of collector cars have just done this is, and jokes aside, right? iRobot, Will Smith, that car was in that movie. People's brains exploded because of the movie and the car. And then that car showed up and people's brains exploded again. And just based on where Volkswagen Group drivetrain is going, if they bring an R8 back, it will be a hybrid.
Right.
I do think that car is probably the most underrated right now in the market.
It'll probably be a twin turbo V8 hybrid that revs to like 10,000 RPMs probably.
Yeah, because that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. All right, last question. Build a 3-car garage. You get an SUV.
Okay.
You can pick a car over $1 million.
Okay.
And then your last car has to be under $1 million.
This is going to be quick. Full-size short wheelbase V8 Range Rover. Chiron Pure Sport. And probably a Golf R.
A Golf R.
Probably a Golf R.
Over the 812 GTS.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it would be like, as like a, it's terrible to say, right? A Bugatti in the garage, like a normal person garage. If I could have, absolutely anything, sure. I mean, a Chiron Pure Sport. I drove a Zonda once, which was visceral and very raw. It actually was a Zonda race car. It was a manual Zonda, retired Le Mans test car.
Wow. It's pretty sick.
And it was in fairness, it's exactly like what you'd imagine. It was a go-kart with a just huge engine sitting behind you. But yeah, that would probably be the garage. That would probably be the garage.
All right.
The specifics of the Range Rover.
Green on tan.
Do you drive one like that today?
I drive a white on black.
To that exact what you said, right?
Short wheelbase. Yeah.
How could I tell?
It's an older
based on
generation.
Your specifications to that car specifically, that's what you drove.
I guess there are people, and that is why those guys in those training rooms exist, talking about the customer profile that fit into certain cars. Since I was a kid, again, going back to like the storytelling, right? Land Rover, Range Rover, and it's just there's not, in fairness, again, if you talk objectively about a Land Rover or Range Rover product, like nobody would, reliability is questionable, the fit and finish is questionable, all that sort of stuff, but people buy them. People buy them by the actual truckload. And I happen to believe, I just think it's an elegant, very nice, comfortable, safe, and if you've got the supercharged V8 and you put your foot down, the thing gets out of people's way.
You're right.
Which
the
in
first
LA
10,000
traffic
miles?
is kind of right. Exactly. Yeah. First 9,800 miles.
Yeah, exactly. Quite literally. It's the ultimate housewife car, and it's been the OG housewife car before the Urus and before the G-Wagon and all that stuff. It's been the housewife car.
It's another one of those really unique product and brand stories where the legitimacy of a Range Rover came from the first 40 years of production was a violently talented off-road vehicle with leather seats and a wood steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
They still play off that narrative today. And it's like, you would like some farmer in the north of England or northern Canada or a rancher in Bakersfield isn't buying a Range Rover to go bouncing around on their ranch. They're in an F-250.
Right.
But a Range Rover in the 80s did that. and hauled trailers around with horses and sheeps and shit in it, you know, if you're the owner of the farm or whatever. But that's why that's the epitome. I mean, look at Defender. Your Defender isn't a Defender.
No, it's
It's
not.
a marketing exercise.
Yeah, it's an old Range
It's a
Rover.
marketing
Which is why the
exercise.
Ineos
Brilliantly
is here.
done.
Correct.
But it's a marketing exercise.
Correct. Because you know why? Because people don't know history. Because they don't give a fuck. They don't learn. No one educates themselves. They put something in front of you. They go, oh, wow, this is new. It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we could go on all night and this would never end, but it has to. So where can they find you on social media?
It's I think on Instagram I'm just David_Reunert and yeah.
Perfect.
Got it.
Go give him a follow. Thanks for coming on. It's a lot of
Thanks
fun.
for having me.
It's been a fantastic episode.
Thanks for having me.
What a fucking ball. We're out.